Welcome guys and girls, Mark Crossfield here, and I'm just going to show you how to improve your approach play. We're hitting, this is my 25th approach. You can see that one's landing short. Common problem you'll see with amateur golfers, I mean we can just show you say 15 handicapper stats here. You'll see how often they come up short. Now why are golfers coming up short so often? Today's video might help you hit a few more greens. Let's show you what I mean. So I'm averaging 160 yards with my 8-iron here. So a basic approach for me. And you can see the last shot here came up way short, only carrying 144 yards. Why is that? Well, I struck it a little high on the face. So what happens when you get an amateur golfer into your studio for a lesson is you get them to hit a batch of shots. The bigger the batch, the better. And you start to see these patterns. And the most common pattern, which is obvious, lots of people would know this, of coming up short with approach play shots, is basically poor striking. So not being able to strike the ball consistently enough on the face. So let's share with you my top 3 striking tips that will help you hopefully hit 1 or 2 more greens around. That's all you have to do if you're like a break 80s shooter. Generally 1 or 2 greens around can really influence your scores in a really positive way. So drill number 1, I've got my wallet and basically I'm going to use, you can use whatever cards you want, my little Arnold Palmer the Lodge card. So it's basically a credit card. Oh Bay Hill, I miss you. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to use this card to get the feeling of striking a little better with a little bit of handle, lean and control of that face. So let's show you what I mean. So many golfers struggle with turf interaction, good contact on the ball with irons because they tend to deliver a little bit straight shafted, even handle back flicking forward, tends to bottom the club out a little early, then they catch halfway up. The other thing as well, if I just lean this shaft forward, look how much more up the face that ball gets. Naturally gets a much more kind of 2 to 4 groove high strike rather than horrible thin ones out the bottom, kind of fats and fins, which is a common problem with people coming up short a lot. So the credit card. What you're going to do is pinch it with thumb and first finger here. So on my lead hand grip, I've got it pinched in a way that I can put both hands on, but basically between my thumb and my first finger, I'm just pinching it in the top of the grip. And then what I'm going to do is use the face of this club to help me control the face of this club. So what I'm going to do is I set up to hit this ball pinched between thumb and first finger with the card here, is I'm just going to literally pick my hands up a little bit, handle forward and try and get the Arnold Palmer part of this card pointing where I want that ball to go. So basically out towards the target and forwards. So like I'm going to present the logo into impact of the card. And what this will do is it will present lots of handle lean, really turning that face kind of down, de-lofting that club. And it will give you the feeling of how an impact might feel when you've got a decent amount of handle lean opposed to trying to flick it forwards where I can actually see the face of this card. So it's just a visual cue to help you get the feel. Now what you can do is hit a few little shots. So you could just try and present a little practice swing, and then just put it into like a little chip shot. You can see how nice and straight that one's gone, but it's a real handle forwards idea. Feels like my handle goes up a little bit. My wrist starts to go a little bit straighter with my lead arm as well. So a feeling of moving my wrist this way as I hit the ball basically. And what you can do is see how that translates in a backswing. So if I go top of my backswing and stop, I don't want to see the face of this card, I'm seeing the back of it. If I'm someone who extends my wrist a lot, so a lot of cupping in that lead hand, I see the logo on the front of this card here, which is great for hitting down and across and kind of flicking that club forward to try and hit target. So to get the feeling of the wrist moving in a different way, this visual cue for people is really good for giving them the feeling of hitting a little bit more with some lean, de-lofting your iron, and often a little bit more down into that angle of attack as well. So again, you can do a few practice swings, try and point this card so you don't see the face of it, so I'm seeing the back of it opposed to the front of it. And it's always good on any drill to do like the right way and the wrong way to get a feeling of both. So again, at the top, I can feel that card's pointing away, coming down in to hit the ball. I'm going to face that card to the target. Now this is quite an extreme feeling, it's almost slightly overdoing a theme, but I quite like that for students. When you've got the idea of that in there, take the card out, pop it in your pocket, and see if you can recreate that in a shot. Pretty decent strike. Hopefully making a little bit more of the distance as well. So the last shot, there was a de-lofting element. I hit down slightly. There was a nice bit of contact with the ground just prior to ball, to be factual, but it feels like it's ball first, then ground second. rather than presenting that leading edge of the ball. How you control the face, so how you control your wrist angles and the ideas of how those wrists come through, is a great way to get more people hitting more out of their irons with better strikes. The other thing as well, by just getting into a habit of de-lofting clubs, again, it puts them on the longer side of their carry brackets, often rather than the shorter side for most people, which allows them to get those distances moving forward consistently. Just imagine if you're someone who presents, let's say, 26 degrees of dynamic loft, so the loft delivered at impact with this club, and then the next one you flick it way forward and go and deliver 32 degrees of dynamic loft. Well, 32 degrees of dynamic loft with this club, to catch up with that de-lofted version, is going to have to move so much faster, and that's one of the things you notice with golfers, is they're not changing their speed that much, but the variables from the strike and in turn loft presented can really harm them. Give this one a go. Tip 2, it's going to start a little bit data intensive, but just stay with me because the actual tip is really simple, but I just want to show you how it reflects in ground force reactions, kind of how you push on the ground can really influence how you strike or not your iron shots. So I've got 2 swings here, the left and the right. In the comments, look at the knee and the hip area. Can you see a difference between those 2 actions? You can use the graphs if you want, if they're hard to understand for lots of people, but what's the biggest difference? Go on, in those comments. What's the difference? Go on, down there. What can you see? Go on, and you? Yeah, good comment, I like that one. A couple of things happening here. I'm going to go through this as quick as I can, just so we get onto the tip, which I know you will want. This one I've got lead foot lift, so my left foot is coming off the ground. This one it isn't. This one my hips are more pitched, more tilted this way. This one they're a little bit more level. This one I've rotated my hips a little bit further than this one. Now, because I haven't rotated as much and I haven't come off the lead foot, 2 things happen on the way down. So the first thing, this is horizontal forces, so forces going left and right, this kind of pinky graph. And what you're going to see from the right hand one, which is the better strike and the better swing, is I'm getting out of these forces much quicker. I'm getting out of the ground much quicker in a horizontal form. So basically the left hand picture where I don't strike it as well, I'm kind of gliding across, where the right hand picture where I strike it better because I've used my hips in a better way. I've moved pressures onto this lead foot and now I'm actually trying to get back onto this foot. This foot is actually almost pushing this way rather than me just sliding across. So really you can think of it as a much more aggressive movement in my hips and then in turn in the ground. And this is the other key issue with these 2 swings. So what happens if we move us into impact with these 2 swings? What we see is basically on the left hand picture here, so just prior or post impact, you see the ball in the air for both of these, is I'm peaking my vertical, so my push out of the ground on the left hand one, because I've spent all my time going horizontally. The right hand picture, you can see I'm at the peak of my force pushing backwards and I'm way out of my vertical. So I'm post jump, basically. I'm past my jump, which basically on this swing happened way earlier. So on the right hand swing, I peaked my vertical while the club was still way up in the air, hands around hip height. Sorry, I know that gets quite data-y for people, but let's break it down this way. This is such a common pattern I see with golfers. Like, you'll be amazed how common this is amongst amateur golfers. So my left-hand pick, which is basically my old swing, I make a nice call on the way back, and then I spend most of my time on the downswing just kind of gliding across onto my lead foot. So I'm just kind of transferring weight, which is something I was taught and people have taught for years to get across, and something I've taught in videos as well, but I certainly wouldn't teach it so much that way anymore. It's a very 2-dimensional feeling of just moving this way to try and, not hit the ground first, get the ball, and then the ground second. We're actually in the second swing, which allows me to strike much more dynamically and get more speed out. Similar backswing, but much more of a coil into my lead foot, so on the toe. Heel comes up, pushing into the ground as well as pressure on my trail foot. Hips turn more and tilt a lot more. This allows me to load a bit more, so out of this side and into this side almost, because I want to push out of this side if you think about it. So I'm at a downswing on the 2. I wasn't peaking verticals until impact, so I didn't actually start to get out of my jump till hitting it afterwards, a waste of energy. Where on the better struck, more stronger shot, I was actually getting into the ground here and starting to push out from about here. Because I loaded it up more, I loaded it up in my backswing. Now this is quite scary for lots of golfers, but the more you can get them so much more dynamic in their legs, in the backswing and the downswing, their strikes transform. So many golfers are literally kind of paralyzed, staying flat on the ground for security. And what it really offers is a lot of really wishy-washy strikes and interactions with the ground. I see it as I measure people on my Swing Catalyst force plate here, time and time again. Basically, you don't get many amateurs coming with really dynamic movements in the ground. Good players, they just come and do it. They're not even knowing they're doing it. So let's get you moving better in the ground. Get some strikes. First, number one, don't be afraid to let lead heel come up slightly. Don't be afraid as well as you do that to get your hips tilting as they turn. So left pocket down, right pocket up. Great way of doing this is moving lead knee, so for me left knee, down and right into and forward of that ball. What this does is it gets the downswing spinning out. It gets the downswing really pushing out of that lead foot, getting some pretty good strikes with some good distances. In the comments down below, do you recognize this golfer? It's such a common golfer at your clubs. Very paralyzed and then kind of just shifting across. Gives these kind of weak, fluffy, horrible strikes. Feels safe, but for most golfers, like I say, the striking just isn't good enough from there. So lead knee in towards the ball, left lead pocket, down, and then as you come in to hit the ball, we want you getting back out of that. So this drill kind of has two parts. The other thing you could do to help you with the feeling of the downswing, which I do with lots of students, I want you just to put the club back so it's parallel to the ground here. Now from here, I want you to feel like you push down and up out of that lead foot. So really feel like you're going to squish something under your lead foot to get out. Little few pumps on the backswing just to hit a few shots this way. See how quick you can get out of that foot in such a small time. You'll be amazed how far they can go doing this. So again, little pump on the way back to get you a bit of momentum, but you're really trying to get your feeling of getting out of that lead foot. So you've got to push in it quick and out to get some shots going. I mean, that one's going. Look how far that one's going. I mean, that one's carrying 83 yards on something that I feel like I'm barely doing. Sorry, it's carrying 104 yards, which basically felt from there because I'm getting much more dynamic out of my feet, out of my ground, out of my using those forces from within or in the ground that we all can use. So more dynamic on the way back, get your hips tilting, lead foot coming up a little bit, downswing. Don't be afraid to push into that and then get out of it. Honestly, it's scary. This idea transforms strikes for students. It just transforms it. Let me know if it helps you. Right, last tip for transforming your strike play and getting those two of your next approaches that come up short, getting up onto the green, hitting that green two-putting rather than chipping and two-putting and lowering your scores. Simple one to do. I use this one to warm up because it really gets, I get a little bit sore in my left kind of groin area and hip, and this one does allow me to warm up a little bit nice and gently. So I've got medium iron, still 8 iron, normal stance of the ball. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my lead foot in. So it's basically just pointing ahead of the ball here. So it's like level with the ball, just left side, so lead side of it. I'm going to make a backswing where I feel I move my pressures onto my right foot, downswing, step and hit. So what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to step and hit. So I'm not going to hit and step, which is the coordination issue people have of not wanting to get out of this lead side, so they actually stay in that trail side to do it. So again, same width of stance, bring lead foot in. So what I'm going to do is step, and then to hit, I'm going to jump out of it. So I'm basically going that way. So I'm going step, so downswing, step out, step and push. So that pushing onto that lead foot, so that step onto that lead foot kind of creates this brace where you then start to push back and out. Because what you're going to notice, if I hit one where I really try to get out of my lead foot early, watch what happens to it. You'll notice what happens. Watch where it goes. So that's me trying to give it what for, a little bit of speed. You can see I'm carrying that one way up to the pin and pass, and it wasn't even my best strike. But see how it's jumped back. So on that downswing, I'm pushing so hard down and forwards with my foot that the ground kind of pushes back at me, and as I come in to hit the ball and I'm getting out of this foot, it pushes me back. And this is something you see some really good players. Watch footage of Tiger going for on his lead foot, jumps back. I've got pictures of Louis Oosthuizen, a classic swing. Everyone loves his beautiful classic swing. I've got pictures of him hitting shots driver where his lead foot is in the air because he's loaded it and jumped off it to hit the ball. These kind of dynamic impact positions really allow these players to have speed and, believe it or not, loads more precision than you think you have from these kind of safe, short, connected actions that people want to have with the ground because, again, like I say, they feel safer. And it's that transformation I'm finding with the help of things like Swing Catalyst here, where you can measure what people are doing in the ground. When you get people actually using and pushing off the ground a little bit more, if they have that control of face and dynamic loft, like we did at the start with my lovely Arnold Palmer Bay Hill card, once you've got that feeling, then using some dynamic feelings in the ground will totally transform your striking. And like I say, this last drill is quite good for warming up. You could use a 9-iron or a wedge, just a few steps and jumps to hit the ball. Don't worry too much about your strikes if they're a bit fluffy at the start, because it's more of an abstract drill, so sometimes they're hard for people to actually coordinate with. But the more you practice it, the better it will get. And the more you practice it, the better timing you'll get at it, and you'll start to really feel how that kind of step and jump feel is actually in those graphs to a certain extent without the physical step and jump. Let me know if this helps. And key questions from today's video. Do you know how many of your approaches do come up short? How does it compare to that data I showed you? Lots of people don't understand they come up short enough, and if they did, they'd be able to hit more greens and lower their scores. How much are you monitoring your strike when you're on the course? Please say a lot, because it's key for every shot. You've got to know if you've struck it in a kind of some kinds of realms of normality to know if that's come up short because it's the wrong club, didn't judge the wind, didn't judge the slope, those kind of things. And how many of you as well are worried about some of those drills because of the dynamicness of them, the kind of movement of them. I know lots of people are, and I suppose certainly when I work with students, they're a little bit thrown at the start. But when you get them thinking that way, like I say, strikes transform, golf transforms, and they enjoy it a lot more. Let me know if this helps in the comments down below. Thanks for watching as always. And if the comments or any other tips I should say have helped you today, maybe hit that subscribe button, because there'll be plenty more free golf tips coming this way.